When we hear the term think tank, we normally think of the big public policy research institutes that you might find on K Street in Washington, D.C. But D.C. isn't the only place you'll find think tanks. We have several in Oregon, including the one that we'll talk about today with Alejandro Queral, Executive Director of the Oregon Center for Public Policy. The Oregon Center for Public Policy bills itself as being in the fight for economic justice for all Oregonians. Mr. Queral, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics, and congratulations on 25 years being an organization.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Some describe the Oregon Center for Public Policy as a liberal think tank. How do you describe yourself?
Well, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that uses research and data analysis to develop policies that will address the economic challenges that Oregonians face. And we've been doing this for 25 years, as you've noted.
One of those economic initiatives, policy initiatives, has been you advocated for raising Oregon's minimum wage, which has been raised over the last several years. Explain your involvement in that policy initiative.
Well, you know, that is one example of the many other issues that we have been able to advance that enhance the economic security of Oregonians. Our role in advancing this type of policies is, first of all, to understand what are the challenges that Oregonians face, and secondly, what are viable solutions that actually are adequate and that advance the greater agenda of economic justice. So wages, living wages, are one of the many policies that we advocate for that would increase the income that Oregonians bring home and that allow them to actually afford the basic necessities of life.
How do you collect the data to advance that agenda?
A lot of the data that we use is data that are available or were available on many federal websites, as well as Oregon data that the Oregon Department of Revenue collects, and data that is available through the census. And so that helps us get a better understanding of the various conditions that Oregonians are facing across the state and in various parts of the state.
You heard our interview with Congresswoman Janelle Bynum talking about the House budget resolution. I know you've taken a look at that. What's your take on what you know about that budget resolution so far?
Well, first of all, I would agree with Representative Bynum that, you know, we need to know more details. But I think the writing is on the wall that there are three things here that are at stake with the budget resolution. First and foremost, there are proposed cuts to programs like Medicaid and food nutrition assistance that would impact Oregonians, Americans, particularly working class Americans that are struggling to make ends meet, and would affect them directly. Secondly, what we know is that many of these cuts are actually driven by the desire to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts that actually favored the very rich disproportionately over those that work and have lower incomes.
Let's take that a little further. What do you think is the major takeaway from the desire to extend those tax cuts? And what do you think the long-term impact of that could be?
Well, the long-term impact, as we've already known from the 2017 law, is that it will add significantly to the deficit. That's going to be a major driver for increasing the deficit, the national deficit. Secondly, the Trump tax cuts disproportionately favor the very wealthy. We've done an analysis, the Institute for Taxation and Economic Policy in D.C. has done an analysis that those making over $800,000 in income in a year would get a tax cut of about $22,000, whereas those in the bottom 20% would get tax cuts of about $100. So it disproportionately impacts the rich, favors the rich, and it adds to the national deficit.
You state that you want to have an economic system that works for everyone. How are you advancing that concept in the current Oregon legislature?
Well, the Oregon Center for Public Policy has developed a long-term proactive agenda to advance economic justice, and we focus on three key areas. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, we need to ensure that Oregonians have sufficient income to make ends meet, to meet their basic necessities of life, to be able to raise a family. But we also need to have better protections and rights for workers that are enforceable. What we've seen over the last few decades, over the last 45 years really, is a continued erosion of the rights of workers and the ability of those workers to enforce those rights. And thirdly, we need to have a tax code that is fair and that it really works for everyone. The proposed tax cuts in the 2017 tax laws, as I just mentioned, disproportionately affect the rich. When you look at Oregon taxes, and you look not just at the income tax, but all the other taxes and fees that Oregonians have to pay, the reality is that Oregon has a fairly regressive tax code, meaning that those that make less money pay more as a proportion of their income than those that make the more money.
Would you advocate for increasing taxes in Oregon under any circumstances or for any specific issue?
Well, there are many opportunities to increase taxes in Oregon for the very richest and to increase taxes on corporations. There's also opportunities to close a lot of tax loopholes that provide really a lot of benefits to the very rich. Finally, I would say that there's significant opportunities to improve the way we understand what corporations, how corporations are profiting in Oregon, so that we can better understand how to tax them at the right level. There are policies that we've proposed that would require corporations to disclose how much profit they've made in Oregon. Currently, they can shift those profits and hide those profits in jurisdictions outside of the United States that have lower tax rates or are tax havens.
Are there any particular bills in the legislature that you're following closely?
There are a number of pieces of legislation, but one that is very important and that advances our goal to provide economic security for Oregonians is to, first of all, renew the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a policy that provides additional support, monetary support, a tax credit essentially to working Oregonians that have certain levels of income. We have an opportunity to increase the match that the state of Oregon provides. It essentially matches a proportion of the federal EITC. But we also have an opportunity to make it more inclusive. Currently, the EITC under federal law, which Oregon replicates, prevents those 25 and younger without children but at work, prevents them from claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit. Similarly, folks that are 65 and older but working cannot claim the credit. We want to make that credit more inclusive so that it works for more Oregonians.
Alejandro Queral, thank you very much for being on Eye on Northwest Politics. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. It's been a pleasure.
We'll be right back.